let me introduce myself. My name is Evelyn, and if you were to look at my LinkedIn profile or glance through the annual company directory, you'd see a picture-perfect corporate success story. Senior project manager at one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the city, consistently exceeding targets, leading high-performing teams, and delivering projects that have earned glowing reviews from clients across industries. But what those polished profiles don't tell you, what no one outside this glass and steel fortress knows, is how much blood, sweat, and sleepless nights go into making it all seem so effortless. I've been with this company for 7 years now. 7 long years of climbing the ladder, proving myself over and over again, and fighting tooth and nail to be taken seriously in an industry where women still find themselves outnumbered by men in leadership roles. It hasn't been easy, but I can confidently say that every milestone we've hit under my watch has been because of my team. And let me tell you something about my team. They're not just employees, they're family. Each person brings their unique strengths to the table, and together, we've created something extraordinary. We've worked late nights perfecting presentations, brainstormed solutions during caffeine-fueled strategy sessions, and celebrated quiet victories when no one else was watching. We've built trust, fostered creativity, and pushed boundaries far beyond what anyone thought possible. Our latest project, a groundbreaking software solution designed to streamline operations for Fortune 500 companies, was supposed to be our magnum opus. It was going to cement our reputation as innovators within the organization, opening doors to bigger opportunities, promotions, bonuses, everything we'd worked so hard for. But then, on a chilly Tuesday morning last month, everything changed. It started like any other day. The office buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, people rushing between meetings, clutching notebooks and laptops. I arrived early as always, sipping my coffee while reviewing the final touches on our presentation for the executive board meeting scheduled later that afternoon. This was it, the culmination of months of relentless effort. My team had poured their hearts into this project, and I knew deep down that it would blow everyone away. As I walked past cubicles, nodding hello to colleagues, I couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. Every single member of my team had gone above and beyond. From Sarah's brilliant coding work to James' meticulous data analysis, from Lisa's creative design concepts to Mark's tireless client communication, each piece fit perfectly into the puzzle we'd assembled. Even our intern, Alex, had contributed fresh ideas that ended up being game changers. This wasn't just another project. It was proof of what happens when passion meets collaboration. The hours leading up to the meeting flew by in a blur. I gathered my team for a quick pep talk before heading upstairs to the conference room where the executives waited. As I entered, I noticed a few unfamiliar faces among the usual crowd. One of them belonged to Marcus Hale, the newly appointed VP of Operations who had joined the company only weeks earlier. He had a reputation for being ambitious, sharp-witted, and ruthless when it came to results. I hadn't interacted much with him yet, but his presence made me uneasy. The presentation went off without a hitch. I could see nods of approval around the table as I walked the board through our findings, demonstrated the software's capabilities, and outlined the potential impact on revenue. When I finished, there was a moment of silence, followed by applause. For a brief second, I allowed myself to bask in the glow of accomplishment. My team deserved this recognition, and I felt confident that today would mark the beginning of something incredible for all of us. Then Marcus spoke. "Thank you, Evelyn," he began, his voice smooth and measured. "That was impressive. Truly excellent work." His words seemed genuine enough, but there was something in his tone, an edge, that made my stomach tighten. "In fact," he continued, "this aligns perfectly with some initiatives the Delta team has been working on recently." At first, I didn't understand what he meant. The Delta team? They were another group within the company, sure, but their focus was entirely different from ours. Their projects revolved around customer service enhancements, not operational efficiency tools like ours. What did they have to do with this? Before I could process further, Marcus gestured toward 2 members of the Delta team seated near him. "They've been developing similar solutions independently," he explained, flashing a tight-lipped smile. "So, moving forward, we'll consolidate efforts under their leadership to ensure alignment and avoid duplication of resources." My heart sank. The room grew eerily quiet as the weight of his words settled over me. Consolidate efforts? Under their leadership? Was he implying that my team's months of painstaking labor were redundant? That someone else, not us, would take credit for what we had created? I opened my mouth to protest, but nothing came out. Instead, I glanced at the executives seated around the table, hoping for support. Some avoided eye contact altogether, while others nodded along with Marcus, seemingly unconcerned. No one challenged him. Not even Karen, the CFO who had championed our project from the start, said a word. It was as if the ground beneath me had shifted, leaving me stranded in a surreal nightmare. When the meeting adjourned, I returned to my desk in a daze. My team was waiting for me, eager to hear how things had gone. How could I possibly explain what had happened? How could I face them after failing to defend their hard work? They gave it to the Delta team, I finally admitted, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Shock rippled through the group. Questions erupted all at once. Why? How? What happens now? But I didn't have answers. All I felt was betrayal. Betrayal by Marcus, by the executives who had turned a blind eye, and most painfully by the system itself. A system that valued politics over merit, optics over integrity. Over the next few days, anger simmered inside me like molten lava. I replayed the meeting in my mind endlessly, dissecting every detail, searching for clues I might have missed. Had Marcus planned this from the beginning? Did he see my team's success as a threat to his own agenda? Or was it simply easier for him to handpick a more compliant group to execute his vision? Whatever the reason, the damage was done. Our names were erased from the project, our contributions dismissed as irrelevant. Worse still, rumors began circulating throughout the office that the Delta team had spearheaded the entire initiative. People congratulated them in hallways, praised their ingenuity, completely oblivious to the truth. For my team, the blow was devastating. Morale plummeted overnight. Some members stopped putting in extra hours, their motivation drained. Others questioned whether staying with the company was worth it anymore. Watching their spirits crumble broke my heart. These were talented individuals who deserved better than to be cast aside like disposable pawns in someone else's power play. And then there was me. Sleep eluded me as thoughts of revenge consumed my mind. At first, I tried to rationalize letting it go. After all, holding on to resentment wouldn't change the past. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Marcus had stolen something precious, not just our credit, but our dignity. He had robbed us of the validation we had earned fair and square. If the company wouldn't hold him accountable, then maybe it was time for me to take matters into my own hands. Revenge isn't something I ever imagined myself pursuing. Growing up, I was taught to rise above pettiness, to turn the other cheek, to believe that karma would eventually balance the scales. But this wasn't petty. This was theft. This was injustice. And if the universe refused to intervene, then perhaps it was my responsibility to tip the scales myself. I spent countless nights plotting, strategizing, and researching. I scoured emails, documents, and meeting notes, piecing together evidence of our team's contributions. I reached out discreetly to former colleagues who had witnessed key moments in the project's development, gathering testimonials that corroborated our claims. Slowly but surely, I began building case, a dossier so damning that even Marcus couldn't wriggle his way out of it. But exposing the truth wasn't enough. If I wanted true justice, I needed to strike where it hurt most, his reputation. Marcus thrived on being seen as untouchable, invincible. What if I could dismantle that facade brick by brick until he was left standing on shaky ground? The idea thrilled me in a way I hadn't expected. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt alive again. My plan took shape gradually, evolving from vague notions of sabotage into a meticulously crafted blueprint for retribution. Step 1 involved planting seeds of doubt within the executive ranks. Using anonymous tips and carefully timed leaks, I aimed to create cracks in Marcus's armor, forcing the higher-ups to question his motives and methods. Step 2 required rallying allies, disgruntled employees, overlooked talents, anyone who shared my disdain for his manipulative tactics. Together, we could amplify the narrative, turning whispers into roars. Of course, executing such a bold scheme carried risks. If caught, I could lose my job, or worse, face legal consequences. Yet the prospect of failure didn't deter me. In fact, it fueled my determination. This wasn't just about reclaiming what was rightfully ours anymore. It was about sending a message to everyone who believed they could exploit others without consequence. It was about proving that even in a world rigged against fairness, the underdog could still fight back. As the weeks passed, I found myself transforming. Gone was the cautious manager who played by the rules, afraid to rock the boat. In her place stood someone new, someone fearless, cunning, and unapologetically driven. Someone willing to burn bridges if it meant lighting the path to redemption. And so, armed with evidence, allies, and an unshakable resolve, I prepared to unleash my plan upon the unsuspecting corridors of corporate power. Little did Marcus know his downfall was already in motion. The first phase of my plan began subtly, almost imperceptibly. It started with a series of anonymous emails sent to key members of the executive team. Each email contained snippets of information, nothing too incriminating on its own, but enough to plant seeds of doubt about Marcus's integrity. For instance, I highlighted discrepancies in timelines between when the Delta team claimed they had begun working on their initiative and when my team had already completed critical milestones. I included screenshots of internal communications, project management logs, and even congratulatory messages from clients praising our work, not theirs. To add credibility, I made sure these emails appeared to come from different sources within the company. A disgruntled employee here, an observant colleague there. It wasn't hard to fabricate plausible aliases given how many people harbored grievances against Marcus. His reputation for cutting corners and stepping on toes had earned him more enemies than allies over the years. All I had to do was tap into that reservoir of resentment. At first, nothing seemed to change. The executives didn't confront Marcus publicly, nor did they acknowledge the leaks. But small signs hinted that the cracks were forming. During a town hall meeting, one of the senior directors asked pointed questions about resource allocation and cross-team collaboration, topics that felt eerily aligned with the concerns raised in my anonymous emails. Another time, I overheard Karen, the CFO, discussing transparency issues with someone outside her office. Her tone was clipped, frustrated. Progress, however incremental, was progress nonetheless. Meanwhile, I focused on rallying support among my team and other overlooked employees. At first, they were hesitant. Some feared retaliation if they spoke out. Others doubted whether anything could actually be done to hold Marcus accountable. But as I shared pieces of the evidence I'd gathered, their contributions buried under layers of deceit. Their skepticism gave way to anger. That anger became fuel. Slowly, we formed a loose coalition of individuals united by a shared desire for justice. We called ourselves the Undercurrent, a name chosen for its symbolism, unseen yet powerful, capable of reshaping entire landscapes. Our meetings took place in secret, often late at night or during lunch breaks in secluded corners of the building. Together, we brainstormed ways to expose Marcus's scheme while ensuring our actions remained untraceable. One member suggested creating a fake whistleblower account on social media, posting detailed allegations alongside irrefutable proof. Another proposed staging a coordinated leak to industry journalists, knowing full well that bad press could force the company's hand. Every idea was debated, refined, and eventually woven into the larger tapestry of our plan. But perhaps the most satisfying part of this process was watching my team rediscover their sense of purpose. After weeks of feeling defeated, they now channeled their frustration into something productive. Sarah spent hours combing through code repositories, identifying timestamps that clearly showed our team's prior work. James analyzed financial reports, uncovering budgetary overlaps that cast further suspicion on the Delta team's claims. Even Alex, the intern, pitched in by designing mock-ups of what our software might have looked like if the Delta team had truly been responsible for it, all laughably inferior compared to the real thing. As the momentum grew, so did my confidence. Marcus may have thought he'd silenced us forever, but he underestimated the power of collective resolve. What started as a personal vendetta had evolved into something bigger, a movement driven not just by revenge, but by longing for fairness and recognition. One evening, as I sat alone in my apartment reviewing the latest batch of documents, I received a message from Lisa, one of my most trusted team members. She had discovered something potentially explosive, a draft email from Marcus to the Delta team lead, dated months before our project was officially consolidated. In it, he outlined a strategy to absorb our work under their banner, citing vague concerns about brand alignment and executive visibility. The language was careful, calculated, but damning all the same. "This is it," Lisa wrote in her text. "This proves everything." My hands trembled as I opened the attachment she'd sent. There it was in black and white, undeniable evidence of premeditation. Marcus hadn't stumbled upon her project by chance or decided post facto that consolidating efforts made sense. He had planned the takeover from the very beginning, deliberately undermining us to elevate himself and his chosen protégés. For a moment, I allowed myself to savor the victory. This document was the smoking gun we needed to dismantle his narrative once and for all. But as tempting as it was to release it immediately, I knew better. Timing was everything. If we acted too soon, Marcus might find a way to discredit the evidence, or worse, bury it entirely. No, we had to wait for the perfect moment, when the pressure was high and the stakes undeniable. In the days that followed, I worked tirelessly to integrate this new discovery into our broader strategy. The undercurrent held emergency sessions to discuss how best to deploy the email without tipping off Marcus prematurely. Meanwhile, I continued feeding misinformation to the executives, keeping them distracted and off balance. By the time we were ready to strike, the atmosphere in the office had grown tense, rife with whispered accusations and thinly veiled mistrust. And then came the turning point. It happened during a quarterly review meeting, a high-stakes gathering where department heads presented updates to the board. Marcus, predictably, seized the opportunity to showcase the Delta team's achievements, presenting slides filled with metrics and accolades that should have belonged to us. As he spoke, I noticed subtle shifts in body language among the attendees. Karen frowned deeply at certain points, jotting down notes furiously. Another executive exchanged skeptical glances with a colleague seated nearby. They weren't buying it anymore. When Marcus concluded his presentation, I stood up, heart pounding but voice steady. "Thank you, Marcus, for sharing those insights," I began, forcing a polite smile. "However, I'd like to address some inconsistencies regarding the origins of this project." A hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to me. Ignoring the weight of their stares, I proceeded to outline the timeline of events, referencing specific dates, deliverables, and contributions made by my team. I revealed excerpts from the leaked email, projecting them onto the screen for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the audience as the truth unfolded before them. Marcus's face flushed red, his composure cracking for the first time. He stammered, attempting to deflect blame onto procedural misunderstandings and miscommunications. But no one was listening. The room buzzed with murmurs of disbelief and outrage. Even the Delta team members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing they'd been unwitting pawns in his game. By the end of the meeting, the tide had turned decisively against Marcus. Executives demanded explanations, investigations were launched, and whispers of disciplinary action circulated throughout the company. My team's names were finally restored to the project, earning us the recognition we deserved. Yet despite the satisfaction of seeing justice served, I couldn't shake the lingering bitterness. This victory had come at a cost, not just to Marcus, but to the culture of the organization itself. As I walked out of the conference room that day, head held high, I realized something important. Revenge isn't a destination. It's a journey, one that forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world around you. And while I had succeeded in dismantling Marcus's empire, rebuilding trust would take far longer. Little did I know, the aftermath of this battle would bring challenges I hadn't anticipated, and choices that would test me in ways I never imagined.